The cloud. It's a term that gets thrown around quite a bit in the tech world. What is the cloud and how can you use it to back up your files? My name is Jesse, and in this class, we're going to be talking about cloud storage. And cloud storage is an important topic for a number of reasons. First and foremost, you may already be using the cloud and not even know it. A lot of times on mobile devices, the cloud is enabled and you're backing up your photos, your files, and you may not even realize it. The cloud opens up new avenues of concern for privacy and security because it's enabled all the time and because your data is being stored on the internet. New questions arise. But at the same time, the cloud also opens up possibilities for backing up your files, for sharing your files that simply didn't exist before. So tonight, we're going to just give you some information about the cloud. My purpose is not to persuade you to use the cloud. We're just simply going to present you with the information, present you with the advantages, the disadvantages, and show you how you can use the cloud to back up your files and to share files with other people. So in this class, we are going to talk about several different things. We're going to start by talking about how to define cloud storage. So what is cloud storage? What is the cloud? How does it all work? We're then going to look at some important questions and concerns that exist surrounding the cloud. And finally, we will look at selecting a cloud storage service and some kind of criteria that you can use to do that. And then also, what are some of the popular cloud services that are out there. So that's where we're going tonight. For those of you who are watching us live, we are streaming live on YouTube. For those of you who are watching us live, you can ask any questions using the chat. So you should have a chat window either below you or to the side. You can also email your questions to trainer@maslinlibrary.org. That's trainer@maslinlibrary.org. So we look forward to hearing your questions. For those of you watching this after the fact, you can always get in touch with us by phone or email if you have any questions. Let's go ahead and get started, and we will talk about defining the cloud. And so cloud storage kind of is a confusing topic. We need to first define some terms before we really understand what it is. And so the cloud, the term the cloud basically means the internet. The cloud basically means the internet. So back in the day, and I'm trying to get my my PowerPoint here working, and it's not working for some reason, strangely. I had some pictures I was going to show you. But back in the day, the images of the cloud were used in network diagrams to represent the internet. So a network diagram would be like, you would have like your network, so all of your computers, your servers, and whatnot, and those would all be diagrammed out, and then where those went to the internet, they would actually represent that with a cloud icon. So the cloud is basically synonymous with the internet. Now, what is cloud storage? So we've talked about what the cloud is. What is cloud storage specifically? So cloud storage, building off of what we know, cloud storage means storing files, you guessed it, on the internet. So cloud storage is anytime you are storing files not on your computer, but on a server somewhere else. So local files are files that are actually on your computer. But cloud files that are stored in the cloud, exist out there on the internet. Basically how it works real quick, you create an account with a cloud storage provider, and then you have a little bit of storage space that is then associated with your account. So you have a little space, and we're going to talk about like how much you typically get a little later. But that space is associated with your account, and then that space actually exists on something called a server that exists in a data center. So a server is a very powerful computer that is used to serve data to other computers. And so servers are typically housed in these big warehouses, sort of, that are called data centers. And then you access that server and your storage space via the internet. So that's kind of the whole process there for how cloud storage works, at least a high level overview. Now, we've talked about what the cloud is. We've talked about what cloud storage is. The next question might be how is cloud storage used, or what is it used for? And so cloud storage is used for basically two purposes. It is used, there we go, now it's working. So we got to skip forward here. Cloud storage is basically used, this is the image of the cloud, by the way, that I was trying to show you earlier. This is kind of where the term cloud comes from. But as far as how or what cloud storage is used for, basically there are two uses for it. So number one, we have backing up files. So you can back up files using the cloud. So backups with the cloud are actually kind of nice for two reasons. Number one, you have the ability to have automatic backup. So anytime you back up or anytime you save files on your computer, if you have cloud storage enabled and you have a client that's syncing files, those files are just automatically going to back up. You don't even have to think about it, and you don't have to run the backups every day, every night, that sort of thing. Just automatically happens. The second reason that backing up your files with the cloud is nice is that cloud storage actually automatically involves something called off-site backups. And off-site backups are situations where the data that you're backing up actually exists elsewhere. So, like, for instance, this laptop, let me show you the laptop. So this laptop that I'm using, if I had files on this and I back them up to, let's say, a flash drive, that's all well and good, but if the flash drive and the laptop are sitting in my house and let's say something terrible happens, my house burns down, somebody breaks in, they steal both of them, what happens to my backups at that point? They're all gone. It doesn't matter how many times I backed it up. If all the backups exist in the same place, then we're out of luck. If we have off-site backups, if my backup existed at my neighbor's house or at a family member's house, then I'm protected. Even if something happens to this, my backup is still safe. And cloud storage, to kind of pull this in, cloud storage automatically involves that, because when you back up using the cloud, you are backing up to a server somewhere. It could be in the United States. It could be elsewhere in the world. So you are not going to lose your data due to some catastrophic incident. So that's one use of cloud storage, is for backing up your files. Another use of cloud storage is for sharing files. So you can share files quite easily with others using the cloud. Typically, the way that we share files is we send email attachments. So everybody out there has probably received an email attachment. Some of you may have sent one. Email attachments are a good way to send single files, for my supervisor here, Jeff, who's actually with us. So if I'm sending a file to Jeff, I can email that file to him. It'll be an attachment. That's great. The problem is, what if Jeff and I are working on one file at the same time? Like, what if Jeff is making changes to the file, and what if I'm making changes to the file? Well, we are going to get two different versions of that file, and pretty soon it's going to be kind of hard to kind of keep track of those. So the cloud actually kind of eliminates that by enabling us to work on the same document at the same time, because, as I said before, that document doesn't exist on our computers. That document exists out on the cloud on a server somewhere, so we can both connect to it. And in fact, some cloud storage services actually offer the ability to work on a document in real time with other people, which is pretty cool. Google Docs is an example of that some of you may be familiar with. So sharing files kind of is facilitated by the cloud in that way. It also, there's another advantage. If you've ever tried to send a very large file, so let's say you're trying to send a video to someone, or like a lot of pictures, like a folder full of pictures, you will run into a limitation with email attachments. This was true at least in the past, and I believe it's still true now, that email attachments can only be up to 10 or 15 megabytes. for the attachments. So you can't send a video, because even like a 2-minute video is going to be a massive file, even that you take on your smartphone. Instead of sending someone that video as an attachment, what you can do with the cloud, you can send them a link to that file, and then they don't have to they don't have to worry about the file being an attachment. They're just accessing a link. You're sending them a link out to a server somewhere, and then they download the file or they watch the file. You bypass that whole problem of file sizes by using the cloud. So cloud storage is used for backing up files. It's also used for sharing files. And I hope that this kind of gives you a better understanding of what the cloud is and sort of how it works and what it's good for, if you're not familiar with it. What I'd like to do now is I would like to move on and talk about some important questions and concerns that kind of surround the cloud. At the beginning of this class, I sort of mentioned how the cloud opens up some concerns for privacy and security. And partially that is because a lot of people are using the cloud, but they don't even know it. Even if you willingly choose to use the cloud, though, there are some things that you have to think through. And I have 3 questions that I've basically kind of established to guide our discussion here. But I believe before we do that, we've actually got a question from the audience. So I'm going to turn it over to Jeff.
Yeah, so we do have a question here that says, does my iPhone always back up the pictures I take to the cloud?
Yeah, so that's a good question, and you might have more expertise in this, Jeff, since you have an iPhone. But so that is my understanding is that is an option that you can enable, and in fact, I've helped people either turn that off or turn it on, whichever they preferred. Do you have any experience with doing that?
Yeah,
on your
I cannot
iPhone?
remember what the default is. It may be turned off by default, and you have to turn it on, I think.
Gotcha.
But it's in your, if you go to settings and then under iCloud, and then you choose on there, you'll see what to sync in iCloud, and you can choose your pictures.
Mm-hmm. And we're going to talk about that specific piece, the whole syncing of pictures. And in fact, we're going to talk about iCloud a little more toward the end of the class. But yeah, thank you for that question. That's you're going down the right path. So we're going to go ahead and kind of get into those 3 questions that I was just talking about. So these important concerns surrounding the cloud. So there's 3 questions. So those 3 questions are going to be, number 1, is it safe? Is the cloud safe? Number 2, is it private? Number 3, how much does the cloud or cloud storage cost? So those are the questions that are going to kind of guide our discussion for this portion of the class. I'm going to tackle them one by one. So we're going to start with the first question, which is it safe? Is the cloud safe? Sorry about that. Is it safe? So there's 2 things that I have kind of broken this down into when it comes to security, and you actually saw those just a second ago. The 2 things are going to be your password and also the back-end security of the cloud storage service that you are using. So your password and the back-end security of that particular service. So when it comes to your password, you have complete control over your password. And unfortunately, a lot of people use not that great of passwords. Let's just be honest. So that has been a problem in computing for a long time, that people, they'll not use good passwords. They'll leave it taped on the keyboard and stuff. And there's just a lot of issues surrounding passwords. But the good news is if you use a strong password, you can do a great deal of the process of securing your account. So you have a cloud storage account. A good password will give you most of the protection that you're going to get as far as security. Now, that second piece, the back-end security, I do want to talk about that for a second. We have all heard of situations where there have been data breaches. So you'll hear this in the news. Some big corporation says, hey, we just discovered that a couple months ago we had a data breach and some hacker got all of our customers' information, or they got all of our customers' passwords, or they got potentially credit card numbers, social security numbers. That stuff happens. I mean, you can probably back me up on that you have seen some of these things, you've heard some of these things. Maybe you've been the victim of some of these things. The back-end security of a cloud storage provider is a very important thing, because if you're trusting your files to this provider and then they have a data breach, hackers get in, your data is fair game, as well as everybody else that uses that service. So that's something that you kind of need to think about. You don't control that, unfortunately. That is what the cloud storage service kind of controls. What you do control, like I said, is your password. So use a strong password, and also you can use something called two-factor authentication. Two-factor authentication basically makes it so that when you sign in, not only do you have to provide your password, but you also provide another form of authentication, which is typically going to be a code that is emailed to you or that is texted to you. So that's like a second key that you need to get into your account. And this actually increases the security of your account by quite a bit, honestly. So if you can do that, if you can use a good password, use two-factor authentication, you will have a lot of security on your cloud storage. The issue is that back-end security that we just talked about. So is it safe? The answer to that, honestly, is probably, but I can't say that for 100% because, nothing is safe. And especially because of the cloud and the internet connected nature of it, we can't guarantee 100% security. The next question that we want to tackle is the cloud private? Is it private? And so there's a number of things that are kind of involved with this. So when we were talking about security, we talked about, the fact that you have a password, right? And your password can do a lot as far as securing your account. The issue is what happens if your account gets hacked? And that could be because, you accidentally give your password to someone. It could be because the company has a data breach. Whatever it is, what happens if you get hacked? What happens to your privacy? It goes completely away. You do not have any privacy once someone else gains access to your account, because they can use all your files. They can do whatever they want with anything that is in your storage if that account is compromised. So that's one thing to consider as far as privacy. The other thing that you kind of need to consider when it comes to privacy and cloud storage is, what is the cloud storage provider actually doing with your data? So in a perfect world, you would say nothing, right? They're not doing anything. But there are lots of instances with things like email. So a lot of people's email is cloud-based. There have been instances in the past, and I believe these are still ongoing, where the email provider will scan your messages and then provide you with targeted ads based on your email messages. Are they sharing that data with third parties? And that's all governed by two things. It's governed by a terms of service and a privacy policy. And so if you look into that, you could maybe determine whether or not your cloud storage provider is doing those kinds of things. I don't know. I can't tell you with certainty whether Google or Apple or Microsoft are doing that. You need to look into it for yourself, but it is a possibility. You are providing your data to another entity, and that entity, may or may not be respecting your privacy. So you need to really keep in mind, what types of data you are putting on the cloud. So I would say you don't want to put anything that's too sensitive, like personal documents, personal information, anything like that. Because, there's not 100% guarantee of security. There's also not 100% guarantee of privacy, depending on some different factors. So is it private? My answer is maybe, and you need to check it out. Check out that terms of service. Check out that privacy policy. The third question we've talked about, is it safe? Is it private? The third question is going to be, how much does cloud storage cost? What are we talking about in terms of money? And when it comes to money, cloud storage has different tiers. So at the lowest tier, it's usually free. Now, not every service has a free tier, but a lot of them do. It's free. You're going to have a limited amount of storage. So that could be anywhere from 5 gigabytes to maybe 15, and somewhere in that range. And for most people, that's enough, honestly. For most people, if you're just sharing some photos and, sending some things to people, that's fine. You're going to be okay with that. But if you have a lot of photos, you're a business, you're trying to back up your stuff, those sorts of situations, you could get to where you are at that limit or above that limit. And so there are paid tiers that you can opt for. The ones that I looked at were pretty cheap. They would start anywhere from like $1 or $2 per month for, 50 gigs or 100 gigs of storage, which is quite a bit and, not a lot of money. But that's something to keep in mind is, it's free up to a point, but then if you have more advanced needs, you may meet that limit and you may need to opt for one of the paid tiers. These are typically monthly subscription fees. I should add that. So it's either monthly or annually. Sometimes you get a discount if you do it annually, but this is something that's an ongoing thing. It's not like a one-time purchase. All right. So we have talked about we've talked about defining the cloud. We have talked about some of the questions and concerns surrounding the cloud. We're going to check in with Jeff now, who has a question from the audience, and then we're going to kind of get into the third part of our class, which is showing you some of the cloud storage services. But let's see what Jeff has real quick.
Yeah, I have a question here. It says, can I share my cloud account with multiple people? For example, if I were to share it with my family.
Yeah, and so they do have family plans. They do have business plans where you can have multiple users. I personally have not really been in the situation where I have done that, like at home, where I've had, multiple people using the same account. But if you do opt to pay, it is my understanding that you can, you could have paid storage and share that with multiple people. Have you ever run into that with iCloud, Jeff?
So I have the family plan for iCloud,
okay.
Just because there's so many of us. But yeah, I would think, but if you were using something like, say, Dropbox for files, you could theoretically just use the same login maybe on 2 phones. So you wouldn't have to, have 2 different accounts if you didn't want to.
That's a good point. Yeah, you could maybe get around that in certain situations. But yeah, I actually kind of thought you probably had experience with that family plan. I think you talked about that before. Anyway, hopefully that answers your question. Was there any other ones there?
That's it.
Okay, cool. Let's go ahead and we will move on to the third section of the class, which is going to be selecting a cloud storage service. So selecting a cloud storage service. And I've got 2 pieces to this. So the first part is going to be some criteria by which you can evaluate a cloud storage service. And from there, we are going to look at some of the popular ones. And I'm going to show you their websites. And so you kind of get a sense of what they offer. But for the criteria, so there's 3 criteria that I would like to share with you. The first of those 3 criteria is going to be what type of device are you using? What type of device are you going to be using? And this involves a couple different things. Number one, the hardware. So for example, I've got a laptop here. If I'm using a laptop, that kind of helps me get a sense for what I'm going to be doing. If you're using a smartphone, on the other hand, or a tablet, that's an important thing to understand. Beyond that, though, there's also the topic of, well, what is the operating system of my device? So if I have a smartphone, basically there's 2 choices. I'm either going to be doing Apple with iOS, with an iPhone, or I'm going to be doing Android, right? So there's basically 2 choices. When it comes to computers, I could be doing Windows, Mac. We could be doing Chrome OS. Some people might do Linux. We've talked about Linux before. There's different operating systems. And so that combination, the hardware and the software, the operating system, kind of leads you to a certain maybe conclusion as far as which service you are going to use. certain services kind of have a nice synergy, with different ones. So Apple has iCloud. That makes a lot of sense for Apple devices. Microsoft has OneDrive. That makes a lot of sense for Windows computers. That is all the considerations that you have to think of when you're talking about the type of the device. The other thing that you need to think about when it comes to the criteria for evaluating a cloud storage service is going to be the type of files that you are using. What types of files are you planning on backing up? If, for instance, you are going to be backing up photos primarily, so you're on your smartphone, maybe it's an iPhone, maybe you take a ton of photos. iCloud has an automatic photo backup that we just actually talked about that would be very, very pertinent to you. If you're on Android and you're in the same situation, take a lot of photos, Google Drive has something called Google Photos that does the same thing. On the other hand, if you want to back up documents and things like that and you're on a PC, there are other services that might be good for you. So, for instance, OneDrive. OneDrive is made by Microsoft, and it integrates really well with a Windows computer. Google Drive also can integrate with a computer in that kind of environment. So there's the type of device, there's the type of files you're going to back up. The third thing is going to be the amount of data that you are planning on backing up. The amount of data that you are planning on backing up. And so for this, I'm actually going to go ahead and show you how to check that. So assuming that you are on a computer, you can check how much data you have. So let me pull this up real quick here. We are looking at our... There we go. We are looking at our laptop here. And so this laptop, you can see we have a bunch of different folders here. We have documents, pictures, etc. So let's say I wanted to back up my documents and my pictures, right? So I'm going to go to Documents and right-click on it. And if I go to Properties, that's going to show me a size. Now, we have virtually nothing on this, in this folder. So, we're good. We have like 70 kilobytes, which is nothing. Let's say we wanted to back up our pictures. We right-click on that, go to Properties. We have literally almost nothing there as well. So as far as what we would need as far as backing up, we would be good with the free tier if we were backing up that stuff on this computer. You can do this on your phone as well. So your phone likely has a Files app on it that you can see like the files, or maybe you have your Photos app. And in the settings somewhere, there should be a thing where you can see how much space all of your photos or all of your files take up. Check that out, whether it's on a Windows computer like I just showed you or on a smartphone. Go in there, see how much stuff you actually have to back up. If you look in there and you see you've got 20 gigabytes of stuff, you're probably going to be paying for a service. And so then it's a matter of looking at, well, what's the price? Who offers me the best deal and works on the hardware that I want it to work on, etc. So those are some things that you need to think about. The type of device you're using, the type of files you're using, and finally the amount of data that you are backing up. So those are three things to keep in mind. Let's shift gears and talk about some of the popular cloud storage services. So we need to get into showing you some examples. But before we do that, we actually have another question from the audience. So what was the question, Jeff?
We have two, actually.
Okay.
First is, if cloud storage is full, how do you free that up without paying for more storage?
Okay, so that's actually a really good question. Freeing up cloud storage would involve offloading it locally to like either your computer. I guess you could offload it to your smartphone, like photos, or a drive, like a flash drive, an external hard drive. So you would want to kind of take that from the cloud and put it somewhere locally. Or I suppose you could just delete stuff, but it depends on how important the things are that you have in the cloud. So you can always download stuff and put it somewhere locally, but then it's not going to be in the cloud anymore. So.
All right. So second question is, obviously businesses are using the cloud quite extensively. How can they be so sure of security?
Okay. Yeah. So some of the things that we talked about in the previous section would likely apply there. So, having a good password, two-factor authentication. As a business, I mean, I think you get into some different concerns there, I'm just kind of thinking off the top of my head, but if I was a business, I may not, put certain files like maybe personnel related stuff into a public cloud. Maybe you want to use a more secure system for that. I know that different businesses have different payroll things that they can do. Maybe it's a matter of like choosing what you're going to put into the cloud and not putting some of those things into the cloud. If you were dealing with a situation where you had a payroll system, I would hope that they have better security and are maybe more focused than something like a Google Drive or an Apple iCloud. So, I would maybe go down that road. I mean, do you have any thoughts on that, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of a mix. We do a mix here. We have some services for the staff that are cloud-based because it's easier for some people to access their documents at home if you have a working from home situation. But some of our other documents that are more sensitive, we have our own internal kind of network where we're backing stuff up too. So, I think businesses are using the cloud a lot, but I would imagine most businesses also have a mixture of that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and the different kinds of storage too. That's a really good point. Yeah. So thank you guys for the question. Was there anything else, or was that
that's it?
Awesome? So we've talked about some of the criteria for selecting a cloud storage, and just to recap that was the type of device, the type of file, and then finally the amount of data that you had to back up or to use in the cloud. So what I want to do now is switch over to talking about popular cloud services. So I've got 3 of the most popular ones. And so I didn't actually look at the usage data. I don't even know that that's publicly available. But when I say popular, what I mean is these are cloud storage services that are very accessible to the average person. So like if you have a device like a smartphone or a computer, likely these are either already installed or are easily within your reach, and they're like widely available, right? So there are tons of cloud storage services, and I don't want to be seen as maybe, promoting these ones. These are just the ones that are the big names that everybody is kind of familiar with, but there are lots of other ones out there. So that's an important disclaimer to keep in mind. This is not like a recommendation list or anything. But as far as popular cloud services, there are 3 that I'm going to point out. So we're going to talk about Google Drive, Apple iCloud, and then Microsoft OneDrive. So I'm going to switch back to my computer over here. And you should see the website for Google Drive on your screen. So if you just search for Google Drive in a search engine, this will come up. And so they give you some assurances here, and they kind of give you an overview of what you can do with the cloud storage service. And you'll notice with a lot of these, they offer apps, usually on both iOS and Android, which is nice. And then down here, they should have the pricing. I thought they had the pricing on there. That's all right if they don't. Okay, yeah, we won't worry about that. But so this gives you an example of what Google Drive offers as far as, if you were to go to their site and you wanted to sign up for this is where you would go, and then you would just simply sign in, create an account, and then away you go. So that's Google Drive. I want to show you Apple iCloud, okay? And so Apple iCloud, they're kind of upfront with their advertising there, 99 cents a month for their base package. So this is going to be very, very integrated with Apple devices, obviously. The Google Drive, actually, let's go back to Google Drive because I forgot to tell you about what Google Drive is kind of integrated with. Google Drive, heavily integrated with Android. So Android devices, Chrome OS, so a Chromebook. It's It's going to be heavily integrated. They offer 15 gigabytes of free data storage on there, which is very large compared to some of the other ones. And then they have a special app called Google Photos that you can actually use to back up your photos. So I realized I forgot to mention that with Google Drive. With iCloud, I'll switch back over there to show you that. So with iCloud, you have the option of using this typically with Apple devices. You can get to it through the web, but I don't really know of too many people who use iCloud and like don't have an iPhone or a Mac, or things like that. They offer you 5 gigabytes of free data storage, so it's a little less than Google Drive, but 5 gigs is still a lot. And then you can sync photos on your iPhone and your iPad very easily. So just like with Google, they have an option where like you just sign in, and then it'll automatically back up all of your photos if you so choose. So that's iCloud. iCloud's the big name, if you have an iPhone. The third option that we have that we're just going to talk about is Microsoft OneDrive. So Microsoft OneDrive is heavily integrated with Windows computers, and this is OneDrive's website, and you see they have a thing for plans and pricing. So if we look at that, they have a free tier, and then they have some of these that offer different amounts. So they give you 5 gigs for free. You can go up. They have yearly or monthly, it looks like, subscriptions. The nice thing about OneDrive is it automatically syncs with Windows 10 or Windows 11. So if you're using Windows 10 or Windows 11, you already have OneDrive. It's like a little cloud. In fact, yeah, so we're signed out of it here, but there's a little cloud icon in the system tray, or if you go to the start menu. And the nice thing there is it'll automatically back up all your files. I've used it before. Anything I did, the moment I saved a file, it would automatically back up, which was really nice. So those are 3 of the biggest names in cloud storage for kind of like consumer level, cloud storage. There's all kinds of options out there, but those are the ones that are going to be very much within reach, literally probably already on your device if you have like an Android phone, an iPhone, or a Windows computer. So I would look into those. Also check out other options. Jeff mentioned Dropbox earlier. That's one of the kind of the old original cloud storage services. There's all kinds of ones that as I was doing research, I had to kind of focus and only pick certain ones, but you can choose whichever one you like. Just keep those criteria in mind. We're going to check back in with Jeff, who has another question for us from the audience.
Yeah, question is, what is the difference between the base package and other more expensive packages that Apple iCloud offers?
Okay, yeah. So let's see if I can pull up the comparison, because if we can see it, that will be nice. I have a hard time navigating these websites under pressure, So yeah. Here we go. Here is this is their kind of packages, so that you should see that full screen now. So you can see the 5 gigabyte one is free. So the storage is one big differentiator on top of that. So 5 gigs versus 50, that's 10 times less. You also have these features. So a lot of them will offer this where I think you can, I'm honestly not that familiar with a lot of these, but like the family sharing is one where you can share an account with other people. So like Jeff was talking about sharing an account with his family. So you have to be on one of the bigger ones to do that. Some of the other features involve like collaboration, not necessarily these, but with other platforms that like you can collaborate with people in certain ways. Maybe you have access to certain special things, like I can work on the same document at the same time, things like that. Sometimes those are in the free tier though. Maybe Jeff, do you have a good sense of specifically with iCloud what the differences are?
Yeah, mostly it's just storage. They have a secondary feature. It's called Apple One. So Apple One includes iCloud, but then that is also where you incorporate like your music,
okay,
the arcade with
Gotcha.
apps. there's some other stuff I can't remember. I think they have a news one now, and it's kind of like iCloud, but it has its own tiers as well with family. So if you have a family, you can share your storage, you can share your music, and all of that stuff in just one monthly package if you choose to.
Gotcha.
So
interesting. Yeah. Yeah. So just to boil it down, like, so it's storage and features, and then whatever those features happen to be, and maybe you care about those, maybe you don't. So,
got a couple more questions that popped in here. Can you turn off OneDrive on a computer?
Yes, you can turn off OneDrive. So let me see if I can show you something over here that would even be worth looking at. So number one, I hope this is visible, but I'm going to show you. So the system tray. So when I say system tray on Windows, that's like these icons down here. There is an arrow pointing up, and if you click on that, you will see a little cloud icon. Kind of looks like that picture I showed you earlier. That is the icon for OneDrive. And right now we're not signed in, and so it's grayed out. And if we hover over it, we can see that. To remove OneDrive from your computer, you can go to the settings menu, and then, so that's start menu, settings, go to apps, and then we can go in here, and if we go to Microsoft OneDrive and we hit uninstall, then we can uninstall it. So I'm not going to do that right now because we might want OneDrive on here, but if you want to do that, it's right there, and it's really easy to uninstall it. If I'm not going to use OneDrive, I probably just uninstall it so it doesn't kind of bother me and it isn't running down there. So yeah, pretty easy to do that. I think Jeff had a couple more, right? Yeah.
What's the process to save a document to the cloud so another can review it?
Okay, yeah. So with that, you're actually going to want to log in to the cloud. If you stall for me for a second, Jeff, I can.
I was trying to figure out how you're gonna.
Yeah, I was gonna.
It's gonna be a quick turnaround.
Right. Yeah, I might not be able to do it. Let's see if I can race against the clock, and if I can remember passwords. All right, here we go. That was pretty good.
That was
yeah,
good.
yeah. So this is Google Drive when we're signed in. I wasn't gonna go to this point, but I guess it's actually good. That's kind of crazy. There's a map in there. Oh, this is okay. Never mind. We created that. We were messing with something. So if I wanted to upload something to Google Drive, what we would do, like let's say I want to upload this presentation that we were messing with here. So the cloud storage basics. You can actually just drag and drop it. Honestly, like it's really easy. You just drag and drop. And it uploads real quick for small files. And then if I wanted to share that with someone, so, like we want to collaborate on it, you do have to consider the format when it comes to that. So Google has their own format that works with Google Docs, right? So like that is the format you would kind of want to use if you were going to use Google Drive to kind of collaborate in real time. And you can actually do that. I guess I'm creating new things as I talk here, but like you can go to new, you could go Google Docs. We could also, will it let us open this up? Yeah, there it is. I'm excited. Open with Google Slides. So this is a LibreOffice format. LibreOffice is another office suite, but Google Slides is kind of like PowerPoint. And if we open this up, you will see the presentation that I was using. And it might not know what to do with it. Oh, it does know what to do with it. Okay. And you see the green, we have to use green for special reasons, but you have your slides and you can kind of do that. And then you could share with other people. So if I wanted to share this with Jeff, like, hey, let's make this presentation. We can put in Jeff's name. It'll send him a link. He'll open it up and we'll actually be able to work in real time. You can also, while we're talking about this, if you go in Google Drive and go to new, and let's just do Google Docs, for example. it would have been really cool if we were both doing this, but I didn't think that far ahead. But anyway, we can go in here and like I can type some stuff, test. And then I can share this with other people, and I have to name it, so that's fine. And then we could actually do this in real time. If we ever do this again, maybe we'll do that where, we can type on things at the same time. You can actually see them typing, which is pretty cool. So that's how you use Google Docs and Google Drive for collaboration. That might have been more of an answer than whoever that was looking for. But there's a lot that you can do, and it's pretty cool. You can also do that with OneDrive. Can you do that with iCloud, Jeff?
I don't know.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know either. But a lot of those platforms, you can do that kind of stuff, So was there another question?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Can your cloud owner get you into your cloud if you lose your password?
So like they all, like Google, Microsoft, Apple, they all have like a process for that, or a method. Like, so, I mean, you may have gone through it. So if you lose your password, they ask you for like your security questions, or they ask you, like, they'll send an email to a recovery email. There's those kinds of things. If you don't know any of that though, and that's one where like you can get locked out of your account. Like I've worked with people, and for all the stuff that we tried, we could not get into their email, for example. You could get into that situation with the cloud just as easily. And at that point, some people are like, well, I'm going to try to call them. And then it's hard to find a number to call Google or Microsoft or Apple. And then I have not seen too many situations where that works well if you just forget everything. But there is a method for recovering your password in most cases. And if you know those recovery questions, or you have a recovery email, then usually you can get back into it. Do you have anything to add to that, Jeff?
No.
Okay. Cool. Was that all
That's
the
it.
audience
Yep.
questions? All right. Well, thank you guys for all of this. It's like a ton of questions today. That's really good. So, in summary, we talked about defining cloud storage. We talked about some important questions and concerns surrounding cloud storage. And then finally, we talked about selecting a cloud storage service, and we talked about some of the criteria that you can use, and we also showed you some examples of what they offer, just as far as storage space and features and all that kind of stuff. Cloud storage can be very useful. So you can use it for backing up. We've talked a lot about that. Also sharing files. We talked a good deal about that. With what you've learned in this class, you should have a good kind of base understanding where now if you want to get into the world of cloud storage, you can do that. You can sign up for an account, set it up on your device. Now, you may not know all the details, but you know kind of where to start. For the details, and this is where we do a little advertising, if you want to go deeper into this and get more detailed, but you want help, we can help you. So if you call us, we have our information. I hope I'm not. Yeah, ignore that. This is the one. 330-832-9831, extension 344. That's our number. Our email is trainer@masslinlibrary.org. If you want to get in touch with us, we do one-on-one appointments. You can come in, or we can do it over the phone, or you can come in and we'll sit down and we'll help you. Like if you're like, how do I do cloud storage on my iPhone? How do I do it on my Windows computer? We can walk you through the process. It's not that hard, but if you need kind of some help, we're there for you. That's one of the things that we offer for the community. So if you have any questions about that, or really anything else tech related, talk to us, email us, call us. I'll put that information up again here, phone number and email. So just get in touch with us. We will try to help you out. I want to check in with Jeff and just make sure, is there any other questions that we had? Or
We got one last question.
Okay.
Is Google Photos a separate account from Google Drive?
Good question. So no, they are the same thing, and they actually share the same storage. So like Google Drive can do all kinds of different types of files. Google Photos just does photos and videos, and so they share that. If you're using the free account, they share that 15 gigabytes for free, and there are separate apps for them, but they use the same account. So yeah, good question. Do you have anything you want to add before we sign off, Jeff?
No, I think we went through a lot tonight,
Yeah.
so we'll leave it at that.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you guys for attending. Thank you for watching. And like I said, if you want to get in touch with us, just reach out, and we are happy to talk to you. So have a good evening, everybody. We will see you next time.